I wish good things to you who's watching this. I am Alexey, and today we have a slightly spontaneous stream for viewer games analysis videos. Most of these submissions I got quite recently, so hence the spontaneity. Also, I know I've been rescheduling the stream a little bit due to some unforeseen Carcassonne related things. I've been doing some time sensitive recordings. That's all I can say, and the results of that you're going to see in the next few weeks. As I keep saying for a long time, lots of good stuff are in the works. So anyway, the three games that are sent to us by new viewers that have not been featured before on this channel, well, 2 out of 3 have not been featured before, they are mostly about middle games. So we will of course look at the entire games, but specifically we will focus on middle gameplay, prioritization, and things like these. So game first was sent to us by the player with screen name always wanna feeds, and we will jump right into it. Yeah, so that makes sense. Obviously our opponent is starting as green. You're going over here. Same move, but with the meeple I think is slightly better, because what could happen, for example, what your opponent could do, well, obviously they can go here, which I think is a decent move, but if they get a different tile, they can also go here at some point, and they can have 2 cities that they will keep developing facing in the same direction. And this is actually quite a strong configuration, because let's say if they get, I don't know, some sort of, let's say another triple city tile that goes here. Yeah, this is what they could get as red. Then suddenly, if you're trying to attack this city, they can always have the option of creating a big ruin or something like this. Or if you don't attack the city, let's say if you get a Dorito, again, just to reiterate scenario, you get this thing, no, they get this thing, they meeple the city, then you get a Dorito, something like this. Then if you get a Dorito, then you really can't attack the city anymore. So what you can do is you can maybe go over here trying to connect these 2 cities, but then you're banking solely on the idea of blocking your opponent's 2 meeples, right? You can't really connect to the city anymore. And unless you block both of these 2 meeples successfully, so and then most of the time they are going to finish this big city with 2 meeples and probably have a significant advantage through in this game. So the idea is, if you leave a city like this without a meeple and your opponent takes a triple city, it can create a situation where you're forced to make the decisive events of the game happen like really, really early, because either they end up with a big city completed with 2 meeples, or they ended up with a ruin with 2 trap meeples. This is not what always happens, but this is something that happens pretty often. Anyway, my main point is that on your first move, generally playing with a meeple is better. This ends up not mattering because obviously your opponent quite wisely chooses to cover up the city. Then I believe you meeple a monastery, which is an interesting place. Yeah, you can do that for sure. So you're trying to block your opponent's meeple together with your meeple. I think slightly stronger is still to go over here and create a meeple. Is simply to go for the monastery, which is the most high scoring, because there are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, you're controlling this little thing, which is a good thing, because sooner or later somebody's going to claim the city. Cities at the start of the game are valuable, even these awkward triple cities like this. So let's say you go with a monastery over here, then what's going to happen at some point, either you get a Dorito and you meeple the city, and then your monastery turns into a 5-point monastery, or maybe your opponent gets a Dorito like this and meeple the city, but then you are controlling your opponent's city with your monastery. But that's not all. If you place this monastery over here, you're controlling something far more important: space. Imagine if you place a monastery over here. where does your opponent build? If they get a road tile, they're forced to either add a point to your monastery, or they're forced to place it in such a way that threatens their own city. If they get a city tile, same question. They're either forced to build on your monastery, or they're forced to build here, which is controlled by a monastery, or they're forced to build here, not here, but like where your monastery currently is. So let's say they get a regular city cap, and they build like this, well, then they're also hurting your own city, and they're creating a blocking platform like this. So this is a bit of a problem. And very often, if you meeple monasteries at the start, so your idea of controlling your opponent's meeple is very good, but getting more points and controlling space is more important. So this, I think, is a better move of placing the monastery like this. Okay, I see that some of you are still here, or here now, despite the reschedule, so it's very nice. And because I'm always paranoid, maybe somebody drop a message how my sound is doing. To always keep tweaking it, to sometimes too loud, sometimes too soft and everything. Okay, now what your opponent should do. Actually, wait a second. Yeah, let me do this. And then we can continue. So what your opponent can do, they could either place this monastery over here, which is decent because, you know, this is where you could have placed it, and this is pretty much the same thing. Or, not the worst move for them is to place this monastery over here and restrict their city, simply hoping that they're going to get a defense, and then if they get a defense, they get to wait for one of the 3 starting tiles. But I think, yeah, this monastery moves a little bit stronger, and I think this is what we will end up seeing. Okay, so what are you going to do? I think you're going to start attacking the city, but I do see a move which I find quite strong. So there are several things that you can do in this position. One, you can go over here and simply meeple the city. Even though it's controlled by your monastery, it builds up quite nicely. You take a Dorito, triple city, Dorito, and finally finish it up with a Dorito. And it's actually quite hard to attack without your opponent losing a meeple, so that could be a nice addition. Another thing about the city is that it creates a 2-point road, which can easily become a 4-point road. And when one of you claims this road piece over here, then this will create a vulnerability against this city. So it's an interesting case about pre-building, that even though you're leaving empty stuff behind, you know that whoever takes the continuation of that road will create a situation which is positionally advantageous for you. So this square over here being more vulnerable as a result of somebody continuing this loop road from this square. So another move that you could play, which I think is also legit, is to go here. And the idea is you simply take a 2-point road, you clean up the only crossroads on the map, and your opponent doesn't really have a good move of crossroads. And also you potentially now controlling 2 of your opponent's meeples with 1 meeple. If you're going to start a city over here in the next move, or maybe just put a curve here in the next move, then you will make sure that your opponent needs a starting tile in both places, whereas you are completely happy of having your monastery fully blocked, as long as it blocked together with your opponent's other 2 meeples. I think the move that you played also makes sense. Yeah, you're kind of making the city a little bit more vulnerable, but there can be some negative scenarios here as well. So let's say if your opponent finishes the city early, it's not such a big deal, but then you ending up in a situation where your city is slightly vulnerable, your monastery is slightly vulnerable. Let's say if they draw a dagger like this, and they put it over here, then if you continue a monastery, you put it like you put a road like this, and then your opponent puts a road over here and makes this square vulnerable. Conversely, if you get a city tile first, then you get a tile like this, but then this square next to the monastery becomes slightly vulnerable. It's not such a big deal, but it's just a scenario that you need to have in mind. Of course, I see the thing that you're trying to do is either connect to the city or block the city. But connecting to the city can be a little bit hard. So let's say if you get a triangle, let's say if you get a regular Dorito. Now you're kind of having a bit of a dilemma, right? Because you can't really place the regular Dorito over here because this square will become blocked, and then you will lose 2 meeples against your opponent's 1 meeple. So if you are going to connect to the city, then you need first to draw one of the road Doritos, and then you need to draw like a triple city tile or something like this before your opponent, of course, draws the splitter. As for blocking, it is pretty much also the same problem, because you can't block in any direction. You first need to draw a city tile, such as a Dorito or a city cap, and then you need to draw something on this square to restrict. And you can't really do this in the reverse order, because let's say if you get a curve or something, or a city cap, to put it over here and commit your opponent to a starting tile, then your opponent grabs a big tile or a triangle and puts it over here, completes the block themselves, and now you end up with 2 meeples trapped versus your 1 meeple trapped. So it's a paradoxical situation that it seems that you're restricting your opponent's city a little bit further, making it more vulnerable, creating attacks on multiple sides, but actually it is not that easy to follow through. It's certainly a legit move, not in the least because you're simply trying to get a city and you're scoring, you know, a 2-point move. Well, it's just a 1-point move, but eventually it's going to be a 2-point move once you complete the city and the number of points gets multiplied by 2. So then it's a legit move for sure, but I think the other 2 alternatives are a bit stronger, and when you block the square, you first of all want to put something here and then try to complete the block through other means. Oh, hey, Kirills, thanks for confirming the sound. Well, that's great that you actually gained something out of it. So your opponent defends the city, which honestly I don't think they should have done. They basically should let you block and just wait for the decision. Because now you should be quite happy with this. With any big tile, you get to connect to your city. However, your opponent, of course, can still draw a city cap before you draw something here. It's an interesting move that they played. I'm not sure about the probabilities or anything. It would require a really, really complex calculation because, of course, they're banking on maybe meepling a road here and going like this and then going like this and then making this square vulnerable. So a lot of things can happen before you actually draw a big tile. But if I were them, I would have probably just taken 2 points. So you ended up getting a good thing from this move in the sense that you got a concession out of your opponent. It's always something that's nice to have. They even place a meeple, which I'm not sure is necessary. So you meeple another monastery, and now your position is really good, even if they finish the city, just because the monastery is so powerful. They continue the monastery, making your monasteries a bit more vulnerable, but there's only so much that we can do about it. They meeple the road, which they should not have done, because they can meeple this road later when they complete this city. Now you see what can happen if you as green draw a road or something, oh, not a road, but a city tile or something, then you're no longer forced to complete this square. It's actually red who probably will need to complete this square in order to get this extra road point. Whereas if they leave this road alone, then if they leave this road alone, then you are the one who's forced to make the connection, and then as red, red could have dealt with the road later. Well, anyway, we're here to analyze your game rather than your opponent's game, so you're doing just fine. You start a 4-point road. Oh, yeah, if you make moves like these, always meeple. It's the start of the game. Like, there's no reason to give your opponent spare points. For example, if they get a road Dorito or something, they just score 4 points immediately. And then that's it. So yeah, so your opponent does manage to successfully complete the city, which means that this attack did not fully work out, but that's all right. I'd say that you're still in a good position because of your 2 monasteries and because of you did now, but now it's also a crucial thing. And I think this is actually your main mistake of the game. Always meeple this road. The main reason for that is your opponent is going to get a curve, and then your opponent is going to curve in over here, so eating up this little piece. And as you will see later, it will end up making a lot of difference. So it's just a common pattern that if you are building a road parallel to your opponent and it has a road end, you want to have a meeple there, even if it's a 2-point road or 1-point road, just so that your opponent cannot eat up these points too easily. So your opponent gets to start a new city, as they should. You get to continue your city, which is very nice for you, and now it is making life difficult for this 1-point meeple of your opponent. And with this city, you actually do not necessarily need to complete it in order to benefit from the situation. You're completely happy with a situation where this square gets blocked, with this square gets blocked, you get a quadruple city tile, and then you just build this city around for a gazillion points. Yeah, your opponent gets the 4-point road, which you could have gotten. So again, another case of it was so important to meeple this thing, and it was actually much safer than it looks. So I think we already could have started seeing a certain pattern. Here, it's an interesting situation. Honestly, I might have already gone here, just finishing my city. Not finishing, but continuing my city, going for the idea with the ruin. There are a couple of ideas there. So of course, you might end up in a situation where your opponent gets his meeple back, and then you end up with a ruin and your opponent has the meeple majority, but there are only 3 tiles left with which your opponent can do that productively. It's really only the triple city with a road, because anything else that your opponent uses, let's say if your opponent uses a city cap with a road, this tile is valuable. If your opponent is forced to use this city cap with a road just to get a meeple back, that's pretty much a big win, because then you can always change your strategy and add a Dorito tile, and then suddenly you have renewed the threat of finishing the city again. This is an interesting situation about adding a quadruple city to yourself. It very often is seen as a self-blocking move. It is seen that most of the time, and most of the time it is true, that you turn your city into a ruin and then you give up hopes on completing it. But early in the game, there's still flexibility. If your opponent decides that this is not a completable city, it can cost them really dearly real quick. And then you can say, psych, actually I mean to build up this city, and then complete it anyway. And then you renew the threat and your opponent is forced to chase around again. So this is one of the considerations. Another consideration is this configuration over here. Because there's so many road tiles remaining in the game, there's still 9 curves, 6 straight lines or whatever, you are much more likely to put a tile here before your opponent puts a tile here. As you see from the numbers, 24 tiles fit into that square, most of them with tempo. And so a very likely outcome is you get a straight line, and then you get something like a regular city cap, and then you start a new city, and then you get this square blocked. And then you can grow your lovely ruin, and your opponent really can't do anything about this 1-point meeple. So that's why I prefer this move. What you did also makes sense, because you are disrupting your opponent's city and you're creating an attacking platform, but it is only disrupting your opponent's city so much. So they're probably even happy with the ruin, and even if they don't get the ruin, they are likely to threaten to complete the city at some point, and maybe you will be forced to chase this around. It's a still a legit move for sure, but if you choose between, adding a quadruple city tile to your own feature and making it maybe less completable, or adding a quadruple city tile to your opponent's city, you got to make sure that you're actually doing a bit more damage. So if your opponent had a regular city cap open, then adding a quadruple city tile would have been much more damaging to your opponent, because it is actually, well, let's say if your opponent has a regular city cap, you add the quadruple city tile, suddenly there are like 3 squares that your opponent needs to complete before finishing the city, and then this means that you're likely to disrupt it further or connect. Whereas here, well, you are adding some extra squares. Actually, yeah, you're adding a considerable number of extra squares, but you're not really adding any attacking platforms. Well, you're adding one, but we're not going to use this anyway because it's near to your opponent's monastery. So again, it's a legit move that you did, but I probably prefer just continuing your city straight up. Another reason for this is because this is a relatively vulnerable configuration. It's still the start of the game, of course, but quite often your opponent will get a crossroads or something like this, then something over here, and then this square will be restricted, and then you will need to get one of the 3 daggers in order to get your city back, and it will be a bit of a wait. And the option of developing a big ruin to counter your opponent's road will just not be there anymore. High Glavier. But we're gonna continue. Now you make an excellent move, blocking stuff, which is absolutely lovely. Would have been, and here we see the consequence of your move. You see, imagine if you had a meeple over here on the road. What your opponent's about to do would not have been possible. Your opponent would have been simply forced to like take a 3-point move over here or a 2-point move over road for the road, but now. Oh, so your opponent makes a mistake, which they should not have done. But I think here you get like massively lucky because you make this mistake. I remember them saving this road lately, but I forgot that this was not with this move. So of course your opponent should have gone here and taken 3 points and pre-saved this road and also added some vulnerability to these monasteries. Like that was the move. I think they're too much concerned about you invading this city, which, you know, really should not be a concern. So now you opt for a different strategy. You now opt to finish the city, which honestly is also legit. It's completely fine. It's just a different way of playing things. But now you will be the one who needs to put something into this square, and you need to wait until you get a starting tile or a dagger or something like this. Yeah, now they do the thing that I think they should have done on the previous move. So after this, the situation is pretty difficult indeed, because it's kind of hard to recommend something. I guess one of your best options is to go here and make sure to disrupt the city further and try to equalize like this. Another option is to go here, which actually I quite like, and then trying to complete one of these 2 blocks, really, both blocks on this side. So you go over here. What else? What else? They are defending, which is wise of them. Now again, you have an interesting situation here. So I guess you could complete the block, and it's honestly a legit move. But given the game situation, the fact that you're 21 points behind, maybe spending a valuable tile on doing this is a bit problematic. But then if you're not going to follow through with the block, maybe a better idea was not to start the block in the first place and just place this triple city tile over here, trying to disrupt the city and create an attacking platform. So these are already like some tricky decisions. I think it's okay that you didn't follow through with the block. I think you ended up playing something like this. And yeah, it's honestly a good move. You need to be efficient with your tiles. This move has advantages and disadvantages. I think a disadvantage is that it takes away a monastery spot from you. But then again, because there's this road tile and there's still 4 crossroads, your opponent would be able to take 2 points over here and take out your monastery spot anyway. Your opponent would have been able to do the same thing with one of the 3 triple city tiles that go here as well. So it's a good idea that you actually decide to fill in this square. And if anything, had you not done that, your opponent would have had this tile, and your opponent would have gone over here, and then actually made it much harder for you to complete these monasteries efficiently. Another important thing to realize about this position is that even though you are down 21 points on the scoreboard, like your position is actually really not that bad. Well, this road is what makes this position much, much harder. Because normally what should have happened is that this square would have been blocked or super vulnerable. Now it's saved and your opponent has the 3 points that they shouldn't have. Without this thing, I think the position would have been completely equal, because you have an extra monastery, you have a city that's about to get finished, and sure, like the scoreboard is still quite rough, but there's still a lot of things that you can do in this game. Your opponent goes over here and they're trying to finish the city. It's a very interesting idea. I probably like it for them, but I think if I were red, probably a stronger move was to place this tile over here trying to disrupt your city, disrupt your monasteries, and get your meeple back at the same time. At the same time, giving you only 1 point and not giving you a shield. So it's a dream tile to do stuff like this. But on the other hand, if they get like 1 Dorito, which I think they do at some point, they are threatening to finish the city, and this is quite problematic. So now you probably need to wait. I would maybe go over here, finish my monasteries, get some firepower, and then try to do something about that city. Yeah, you started the 4-point road, which honestly, that's not what the game is about. It's such marginal value. I wouldn't bother doing that at all. I think you're better off. You see, you took 3 points. Well, why not take 4 points over here? It's a 4-point move. You get 2 points for the monasteries, you get 2 points for the road, and you get a meeple back. Oh, I see the reason why I didn't do that. Yeah, you didn't want to make your city vulnerable. But then it's a problem, right? You're still going to need to finish your monasteries at some point. Like, are you really going to wait for a city tile here before you draw something here? Because there's a negative scenario that could happen. Let's say if you draw a city cap like this, then your opponent draws some sort of Dorito and blocks 2 of your monasteries. So probably you will need to finish this first. And if anything, meepling this road is quite alright because it makes it blocking a bit harder. So let's say if your opponent gets a straight line and wants to block this square, then your opponent is forced to place the straight line over here, which would continue the road for you and add 1 point for you. So you would be getting a benefit from that, and you would still have tiles with which you can viably take this meeple back. So I just think this move is simply not fast enough. An alternative that she could have played is placing the curve over here, which admittedly makes this blocking threat a little bit harder, but it has an upside of having 2 potential attacking platforms against your opponent's city, and also 2 attacking platforms where you like need a road piece from one side and a city piece from another side. And this is a configuration which works like so: your opponent has a city tile, and then you have an attacking platform and an attacking platform. This is something that's really like impossible to defend against reliably. Because if your opponent gets a triangle, puts it over here, well then you still have this attacking platform. But if your opponent gets the triangle from the other side, well then you still have this attacking platform. And this is exactly what would have happened over here. So just spending 1 tile on like not doing nothing much could really help you getting attacking platforms for this city in a way which is reliable. Because the thing about this city, it's already big enough. It's like 7 points. Even if it doesn't get completed, blocking probably won't cut it because it can still grow. So you might need to join it no matter what rather than block it. Or, you know, you might need to block it first to prevent immediate threats and join it. But you know that you will need to do something about that city. Yeah, exactly. So your opponent starts a new city. Then here you finish your other city, which makes sense. Probably not the worst idea to already drop a farmer, but the field is like relatively close, so I see why you might not want to be interested in that. Yeah, your opponent is now really about to finish the city. And interestingly, at this point, I would probably still be patient. I think I would just finish my monasteries, try to get compensation because, well, your opponent is about to finish the city and the game is about to get rough. But I don't think I want to be spending an entire move just on creating 1 attacking platform. At this situation, it seems like, yeah, it just seems like not enough value to work with. Although I might be wrong. Honestly, I have sometimes a pattern of neglect against these big cities, but my main thought that I have is, can I survive with my opponent completing the big city? And then if the answer is yes, then I work mostly on compensation. If the answer is no, well then I spend moves on creating attacking platforms immediately. Here the situation is different because your monasteries are vulnerable and you kind of want to get out of that situation as soon as possible. But well, either moves are possible, either connecting to this or going over here. I think you ended up for... Oh yeah, you ended up creating the connection platform, which again makes sense. But it proves out to be a little bit too late. Yeah, so like when you should have really created a connection platform is instead of this move, because it's just a too little value for this road. But it's okay. Honestly, the game is hard, but we can still come back with this, but not with this move for sure. I think this one's a really, really big mistake that makes our game much more difficult. So first of all, there are several ideas. Well, one, think about meepling farms. I guess it's a really inconvenience that your opponent meepled the farm first. Maybe it wasn't a bad idea for us to meeple this farm in anticipation. But then again, of course, we were hoping that our opponents wouldn't complete the city in the first place. So it was definitely okay to not meeple the farm. But now, you need every point that you can get. And think about what you did now. You spent a meeple on taking 1 point, whereas the alternative was taking 2 points and getting a meeple back. So I see that you're trying to join to your opponent's road, but what's the value in that? Your opponent's road is 2 points, whereas you can get 2 points immediately from here, or you can get 1 point from continuing your road. I see that the idea maybe is like to get curve, 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 but it is a bit too slow. Like you need bigger points for comebacks. You need to start dropping farmers, building cities, maybe get a monastery or something like this. And in order to get to monastery, you need to prepare it. So you need to place a curve over here, so that in case you get to monastery, you have this nice square where you can stack, then finish the city, and then suddenly you're really not that behind anymore. So yeah, and the idea of just taking over this road, which I assume was behind, is just too slow. And the thing is, like, it's not really taking over this road, it's just simply building a road, because you're only taking away 2 points from your opponent. It's barely counts pretty much. And also you're justifying their meeple, and now they actually don't need to worry about getting their road meeple back. And if they get a crossroad or something, instead of getting their meeple back, they can just take 2 points somewhere. So a much better move was just simply continuing monasteries over here. Your opponent makes an interesting move, making it slightly harder for you to complete your monasteries, but it's something you should be overall happy about because it doesn't hurt you that much. So you continue your city. Your opponent just goes on the road, which is pretty interesting. Well, now I presume you finish your monasteries. I'm okay with both meepling and not meepling this. Maybe actually meepling this road is slightly better, because your opponent could draw the thing that you drew, and that would hurt you. So you get the thing. Oh, they get 4 more points. I presume you're going to score now 4 points for the roads, which is a nice thing. Yeah, they start a new city, which is a good idea from them, because still many tiles that fit over here, and the most important thing that they're in a lead, they can create threats, and you might need to be forced to chase them around. So you get 8 points for the city, and you have a nice monastery spot, which is great. They just keep building around the city. Now probably a good idea for you is to start thinking about the fields, and you do exactly that. I like this move. In order to win this game, you will need to not only equalize, but also take over this field completely. Your opponent equalizes here. And now, given that you have a meeple majority, which is temporary, but it is long-term, because this square is still very vulnerable, and this square has some vulnerabilities as well. Like it is actually possible to block it if you get a Dorito with a road tile, you put it over here, and you trap your opponent's meeples. And then, given that you're only 14 points behind on the scoreboard, this game is actually very easily winnable with a meeple majority if you use it to create a big field. So there are a couple of moves to consider here. One is maybe starting another field over here, because there's already 6 points. There could be 9 points potentially. And there's a way how these fields could get merged. If you get a monastery tile, you can get 3 points, and then suddenly this city becomes in this field. And also, if your opponent finishes this monastery, well, you have some insurance because it will bring your farmer in. So that's a consideration. A move that I probably like best is something like this. Just starting a new city with the intention of dropping a farmer when you complete the city over here. Not that easy to block because obviously your opponent will need to draw a road tile before you draw a city tile, and there are more city tiles remaining than there are road tiles, so this would be a pretty good bet. And then, you know, eventually somebody takes this city cap, this field suddenly 15 points worth, and you are in a good position. So you do pretty much the same thing, except that you don't meeple the city cap, which I think it's slightly inefficient because, again, you want to drop the farmer after you complete the city. And also you want your opponent to not meeple city caps which don't fit here. So for example, if your opponent gets the left-handed dagger, your opponent wouldn't really have a good use for it. Whereas when you leave this city cap open, your opponent can get the left-handed dagger and just score 4 points. And maybe if they score 4 points again and get this meeple back, they are actually okay with losing this field just because they have enough of an advantage in quick points. So meepling here is slightly more precise. I know it could sound as if I'm being inconsistent because sometimes I'm playing, I'm saying, you don't meeple this enough. And then I'm saying, you meeple this too much. Mostly I see the pattern that probably you don't meeple things enough as opposed to meepling things too much. Just because meepling things in the middle game like this, it just makes it more efficient. And yeah, generally if you could think about it like this, you meeple these features that your opponent could take. So really placing a meeple, the main purpose of that is not so much of building a feature yourself, because again, you could just do it later by adding a tile there, which was your consideration. The main point is preventing your opponent from taking that feature. And this is something where here this would have been worth doing. Whereas obviously meepling this road earlier or meepling this road earlier, kind of none of these features are valuable enough to do such a thing. Your opponent's slightly restrict your monastery. You start a city, which completely makes sense, with the same intention of dropping a farmer when you actually get this square, so I rather like it. So you see, it didn't change very much the outcome, but actually, I think it slightly did. We could have done things, I guess, a little bit more efficiently, because if you get this tile later, then I think you could have meepled this, and then you could have meepled this as well, and actually have 2 cities, which may look awkward, but the main point is preventing your opponent from getting easy 4 points with city caps, just because there's really not many things that your opponent can do with 1 meeple. Or, you could have dropped a farmer over here, which is also a legit move to play. Well, your opponent makes something very weird. The best move for them was, of course, to go here and to try and actually prevent you from dropping a farmer. And now you can absolutely do that. So moves that you can consider are taking 3 points here. But I think the move that I would go with, I would just try to finish the city as quick as possible. Normally cities like this you want to finish with Doritos, but there are really not that many Doritos. There's 3 Doritos and an extra splitter, so actually you will need to be finishing the city with city cap. So I like to use the city cap as a city cap here, which you do, but you don't. I think, again, that's actually quite a big concession. Yeah, that's actually quite a big mistake. So I don't see exactly the reason why you would leave your city here vulnerable from 2 sides instead of just leaving your city vulnerable from 1 side. Because again, you were just 1 tile away from completing this. And you could have already dropped a farmer here, because you will need to drop a farmer eventually. I can see the idea that you maybe have of maybe, I don't know, going like this and dropping a farmer here and connecting here. but then this has a slight vulnerability, well actually a significant vulnerability. But if you're going to go for something risky like this, then the way this works, I don't know, you go here, you meeple a farm, then you put a curve, you meeple the road, and then you take over the road. We shouldn't do that in this game just because we don't have the right odds. Like with it only one crossroads remaining, this square is too easily blockable from this side. But if you intend of, you know, attacking from above, this is the sort of pattern that you want to be normally doing. So anyway, if you're in the chat or are going to be watching this video afterwards, I'm kind of curious to hear the reasoning behind that move, particularly why not this side over here. But yeah, this side over here is just better. That's interesting. Okay, so they attack the city, which, by the way, they would not have been able to do had you placed this tile over here. So we can immediately feel the consequences of that. But at least it allows us to do further things, and it makes sure that our opponent has only one meeple. So what should we do with this tile? To be honest, I forgot what you did with this tile. But the important things are candidate moves. Like, how could you hurt your opponent? One is placing this tile over here and trying to maybe hurt this square, but it does seem a little bit too slow. The move that I have in mind, I want to take advantage of the fact that our opponent doesn't have any meeples and maybe go over here and maybe meeple the farm already, because then we can, I don't know, take the city cap and score 6 points for the city, because our opponents cannot score 6 points for the city because they don't have any meeples. Then we can have Monastery or something over here. Then we can have a curve over here. Or an alternative idea is that we can meeple the city and then draw any city cap and drop some sort of farmer. So both of these sequences are legit. Yeah, you ended up just dropping the city cap, which honestly is alright. Maybe a bit more efficient if you meeple something, the field or the city. Okay, so now you are about to make a significant mistake again. The best move for you is to go over here and take 6 points. Because again, 6 points for free, and you're leaving an empty city cap. And I think you went a little bit greedy. You kind of separated your city from your opponents. The farmer is good if you are going to do that, but the main idea is you're giving your opponent a meeple back too easily, and you're gaining not that much from that. You're going to have a 10-point city versus an 8-point city, and it's really not that much of an advantage. So your opponent gains more by having one meeple in hand. Whereas if your opponent has 0 meeples in hand, you should really make them suffer. Yeah, you should just make sure that their meeples don't see the light of day. Or at least, you know, if you can't block their meeples, then at least make sure that you don't help them get back the meeples so that their meeples stay trapped for as long as possible. And then they get to draw city caps and crossroads and value tiles, and your opponent get to miss value. So it's not a horrible move or anything, because you're still getting some value, getting the city back, and you're getting a farmer. And when your opponent finishes the city, you're going to have this 6-point farmer, and it is in your interest to grow this field. But then again, 6 points. 6 points is better. And also, they are really 9 points in the future because you're planning to take over the field. Your opponent does this. And now here you have a bit of a dilemma. I like what you did in just taking the 6 points. I would have done it on the previous move. It was possible also to connect your opponent's city, but you want to, you know, maybe do this with a worse tile. So now your opponent interestingly gets a road meeple back instead of getting a city meeple back, which actually I understand. Yeah, maybe this is what they should be doing. So that works, I think, quite well. Now you have a variety of options. You can either go for the field straight away, simply trying to take it over. But the thing that I prefer is probably preventing the biggest threats in Carcassonne. I would have just gone here and tried to make sure that your opponent cannot drop a farmer when finishing this city cap. That's a consideration. You can also, I guess, go over here, claim a 6-point field, but given your temporary meeple advantage, it's something that you can do later. You can also go here and honestly try to get a monastery meeple back. So there are a variety of productive moves that you could do. The move that you played, dropping a farmer, actually it's a good move. I actually like it. Yeah, because the idea is obviously you're trying to get there a little bit quicker. It is of course regrettable that your opponent draws a city cap and then immediately they're able to drop a farmer, which is why, again, I would have prioritized this just because there's a considerable number of city caps and this field still has attacking points, so it wasn't like super urgent. Because now your opponent has extra 6 points on the scoreboard, this farmer neutralizes this farmer, and well, there's really only so much you can do at this point. So what are you gonna do? Let's see. Oh, that's a good move. I think it's kind of like it adds a thing to your field, but it also makes your city more vulnerable, or your opponent's city more vulnerable, so that's a good aspect. However, maybe a move that I would have preferred is to place the city cap over here for a variety of reasons. Well, first of all, it protects this connection, which you might need. And you might need this connection because this could be blocked at some point in the future. Now it's actually more likely to be blocked because your opponents, if they wanted, they could block this right now to a 50-50. And then you might have to go through this route. Another thing why it's good to have a tile over here is this. If you go this route and go over here, then this square is a bit more restricted, so your opponent can't pull a swindle where they, on their last move, go over here, get this meeple in, and then this meeple doesn't get into the field because it doesn't have enough moves. Well, anyway, I still like the move that you played. It definitely has a good idea here. It tries to block your opponent. It still preserves very good field connection chances, so that all works all right. Yeah, now it's of course a bit tough that your opponent immediately draws the tile that gets them a meeple back. And now, of course, you're going to complete the connection and you're just about to get your road meeple back. You're going to get it back really soon. But the thing that happens now with your opponent swindling this city, that makes things hard for sure. Could we have prevented that? Not really. No, there's only so much we could have done about that. So... Can you win this game still? It's possible. Let's think about this. So we're down 27 points. Let's say on this field you're going to have 18, so we're going to be down 9. Monastery roughly equals. Road field, your opponent has an advantage. So you somehow need to conjure up like 9 points. And maybe you have a win path. So I can think of a couple of things. You can probably get 8 points by getting curve and dropping a farmer, which again, easier said than done, but it's possible. You can also get 4 points from this tile if you draw it here. And then if you're patient enough, you can actually preserve this 3-point majority because you still have 6 points here and your opponent has 3 points here, and unless your opponent explicitly goes here, then this won't change. And your opponent might not want to go here because they might want to connect this farmer that way and then hope to leave your farmer stranded. And then if you draw tiles which are good enough, well then obviously you will make sure that their idea falls short. Another thing that you could do, well, not anymore really, but yeah, if there were a bit more monasteries, obviously you could have connected over here and then expanded this part. But maybe it's also still possible, like monastery over here, curve, get multiple points. That's a plan. Or monastery over here and then curve like this. It's a bit hard. I think really your main plan is to go here, drop a farmer, and then get this tile on the last move so that you can also meeple the monastery, but there's still some win paths. That's the main thing. Hi, Melvin. Yeah, you do get 2 points, which makes sense. You need to get every point you can get. Yeah, your opponent does meeple this farm, which you can no longer meeple. It's tough, it's tough. Well, what do we do? I guess we just get 2 points somewhere. I can't really see anything better. Yeah, and now your opponent draws the monastery. Oh, and they also connect to the field, which is, I mean, it's not your mistake. Like, we should just take it. Of course, this is something you could have blocked on your previous move, but you can't win the game without the monastery anyway. So, yeah, and here, oh yeah, and here I think you made your, I'd say, biggest mistake is that you conceded the game. Now, it's not a mistake in the sense that you're not sacrificing any win percentage, because once your opponent got this farmer in and this guy is stranded, of course your win percentage is 0. But I think you missed a chance to play out an endgame, try to practice some tile counting or whatever, or just like try to practice, you know, getting as many points as you possibly can. I took this mindset from former Mind Sports Olympiad champion Nick Bastille, with the player with the screen name ever, who like never ever concedes games. And his idea is to use endgames for practice, and also to, well, his idea is a bit like masochistic. So he says that, you know, if I'm in a difficult position, which means that I did something wrong, so I don't want to put myself in that difficult position again, and so I need to experience, you know, all the full consequences. I think it's a bit extreme to like have this masochistic mindset for a game, which is again something is like a hobby. It's supposed to be enjoyable, but there is something to be said about this. And I would say the reason why I don't concede a situation like these is because I try to play it out like an interesting puzzle. It doesn't matter if I win or lose. It's still a question like how exactly do we score the maximum number of points as a puzzle that can be solved. It's a less interesting puzzle than maybe how can we win the game if there's an actual win percentage chance. But it's still worth doing in my view, and it makes the game so much more enjoyable, because then every single game becomes interesting to you. Not just the ones where you win, and not just the ones where you get both tiles. So for me, honestly, like the games where I get some bad luck, well, obviously I don't like losing or anything, but they are interesting, you know, to see how I can climb out of this. And you did mention, well, I mean, you did mention getting like bad luck and stuff when you were writing this game about me. And in the end, for sure, kind of low probability that you didn't get any connection tile here, and also your opponent getting away with that city is quite a big swindle. I mean, they had decent probabilities, and honestly for them, starting the city was very strong and it was quite hard to block, but the timing was definitely not the easiest there for you to deal with this threat. But overall, I think this game was still winnable maybe before in this situation. You know, there's still many things that we could have done. For example, we could have been the first on the farm so that we have to avoid this awkwardness over here above spending moves. We could have been a bit efficient with tiles, maybe proactive with the city and everything. So your opponent did end up getting like many good city tiles, but it does feel that like at some point it was still possible to do something about this game. But anyway, props for you for sending this, and for the end game specifically. I like how you managed these field fights, and really you got into a position where actually made the game quite close. So with the monastery and with your field majority, you would have only been a few points behind. Like with a couple of quick points, maybe you can squeeze this out somehow if this meeple doesn't join this meeple. So yeah, but I think my main takeaway is just try not to think about luck so much and winning about so much, and just try to make the best move and enjoy the game. And so this is what I have to say, like from the meta side of playing Carcassonne. For a more specific side, I think for you is the prioritization of meepling or not meepling things, because I've noticed a couple in the game, maybe you meeple things which are not worth meepling, but then also you don't meeple things which are definitely worth meepling. And as a heuristic, definitely meeple more stuff in the opening and less stuff in the middle game. One of the reasons about this is because this game is not about points, it's about win percentages. And when you start at the start, let's say you have a similar win percentage to your opponent. Like each of you with best play roughly win 50% of the time, although the first player wins a bit more often. And then throughout the game, you work to increase that percentage. One of the way of doing that is scoring points. And at the opening, this is pretty much like the only way of doing that. If you score a lot of points efficiently, you know, if you have more points now, you're more likely to win the game because you're more likely to have the points at the end of the game. However, the same type of mindset is not always true in the middle game, because in the middle game, before meepling a feature, you kind of got to ask, like, does this increase my win percentage? Or like, are the points that I'm going to get from this feature, are they actually going to increase my chances of winning this game? Or is that something that is not going to make that much of a difference? Maybe there's a stronger moves which can increase your win percentage if you do something positionally, like, I don't know, drop a farmer earlier, or like close a field connection or something like this, or, you know, or perform a block or attack a meeple or something like this. So it's not just about meepling things. Well, anyway, these are my thoughts, and yeah, hope you and everybody else who's watching this were able to take something out of this. We took a long time of that. That was 1 hour, which is a good thing because I only have 2.5 games to show today instead of the usual 3. So we will be able to wrap things up quicker than normal, but I've been talking a lot. I need to grab some water, and I'll be back in like 2 minutes. Game 2 was sent to us by, is it this one? No, not this one. Okay, a little bit of a spoiler. Game 2 was sent to us by the player with the screen name Galaxy Racer. We will be sweating it out today with them. So we're playing green meeples. We're playing in first position. And the message was this. We will be playing against 4 monasteries, as you will see. And the theme about this game is how do you play against monasteries in the middle game? Especially when you play against strong opponents. So Dremcat, that's... I'm not sure if they're the champion of Colombia or they used to be, but I think they are like the strongest player in that country, and they are, well, at least one of the strongest for sure. And they've performed very well at the World Team Carcassonne Online Championships as well. So we are expecting tough opposition. Well, luckily we get 4 points at the start, so that's nice. They start a 2-point road, and we also start a 2-point road. I also like the placement of that road for a variety of reasons, but these are of course some subtle reasons. We start a new city, they start a new city. So far, both sides are playing it optimally. Now it's actually already an interesting move. I can see 3 legit moves. One is this one, which I actually rather like. Simply to take advantage of the roads plus city tile. Maybe that's a bit ambitious, but it is also actually done to save this meeple a little bit earlier, because sooner or later your opponent is going to grab a city cap, and then this square will become a little bit vulnerable. It will become even more vulnerable still because you're going to put a tile over here, and then it will become vulnerable from this side, and sort of now you're taking care of this. It also abides by the principle of 2 cities, because again, you can get like Doritos here, and then you can get city caps here. Another move is this one, crazy though it may seem, and this is simply done with the intention of starting another city in a better position. It's probably not worth giving your opponents 1 road point, but if you were to play that, it's not crazy at all. And the third kind of more conventional move, which I would have played a lot of the time, is to go here, simply preparing to finish your city. Well, the disadvantage is that your opponents can connect, and then you've sort of spent 2 tiles and you really don't have another place where you can capitalize on your city building, but it's completely all right. And honestly, in my view, I think like 60% of the time I play this move, 40% time I play this move. It really depends on the mood or whatever. I'm not exactly sure which can assimilate better. And I forgot, well, you found the greedier move. Oh, that's beautiful. I like what you did. Yeah, I didn't remember that you actually found this, so that's really, really nice. Always efficiency is a good thing. Yeah, your opponent takes the first of the many, many monasteries. You now continue the city, which makes sense, but maybe I like it here a little bit more. The reasons being, it is harder for your opponent to connect to the city, and also you'd be indirectly continuing your road. I see why you put it here. Maybe you were worried that your opponent can get a quadruple or triple tile and put over here and then make it vulnerable because one of the daggers has already been out. But actually that wouldn't be such a big deal. 2 daggers is still enough to work with, so your opponent would need to go all the way and try to block everything over here. And second, like the threat of your opponent connecting to such a lovely city with 2 shields is worse than your opponent blocking this city. I would say that it is more damaging. And there is also another moment that, let's say you finish your city and then your opponent finishes this city, and then you have these 3 features kind of tangled up with adjacent squares, and in some situations you end up with this road blocked, in some situations you end up with this road and city blocked, although that's pretty rare. And in some situations, when this road continues, the city continues, you end up with this city block as well. So again, it's a legit move for sure. but I prefer building the city that way. There's some additional considerations, like you're indirectly continuing your opponent's road. And honestly, it's not inconceivable for red to have all these road pieces. It really happens much more often than one might think. So most often it's going to start by red putting something like this tile over here in order to attack the city, and then bam bam, 2 more tiles, and this road is like secured for 12 points. So this is more likely than it seems. Your opponent finishes the city, you finish the city. It's a great tile for you and a good decision. So now you get to go here and finish the road, and also you get to go here. So actually you can finish 2 roads without any further road ends. This is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, your opponent tries to attack the road, which is fine. It's actually a good thing for us because your opponent spends a road tile on something valuable, so we should be happy about this, especially given the fact that you have a Dorito tile with which you could maybe cut your opponent off. I'm not even sure if I like your opponent's move. Maybe you should have done something different, but well, anyway, we're here not to judge your opponent. Here, I think you make a slight inaccuracy. The best move for you is to go over here, because you take out a monastery spot, and you prepare to finish the road with a curve. You also have a good use for straight lines in the future. You can place a straight line here or a straight line here. Like, there are things that you can do for straight lines. So I think the thing that you're intended to do was... Yeah, actually, I'm not sure. Like, why... Yeah, I don't like that move. Because, I mean, what was the point of starting this road if you're not going to take advantage of this road piece? Right, because the goal of starting this road is to get 5 points. Now you're kind of not getting 5 points, and also you're giving your opponent a chance to flip. And the most important part, if they get a regular monastery, then they just win. Like, you're sort of preparing that monastery spot for them. It's really, really hard to do something about that. Whereas, if you were to place this triple road tile here, you instantly take away 3 more monasteries for them. So the only thing that they could have done is they could have picked up a monastery like this, which of course they would have done anyway, but it does not matter. The outcome does not matter, like, for the evaluation of the move. For all we know, this could have been a regular monastery, and with a regular monastery, controlling a 3-point road is just too good. So they in fact make a slight concession. I like their move. They are now controlling a 2-point road, because eventually they're going to get one of these tiles and they're going to score 2 points road for one of these road pieces, and also they leave themselves room for monasteries. Now what you could do, you could maybe start doing some blocking, or maybe go over here, but this is actually, we should not panic yet. The best move is to start a ring road somewhere here, and then we can play against these monasteries aggressively if we get either another monastery or maybe like some city tile or a tile like this. You know, these monasteries are still susceptible to the so-called Ukrainian technique, which we've covered a lot on this channel. I'm not sure if you're going to get an opportunity for that, but there's still no need to panic. Also, you're ahead on the scoreboard. You can still finish the city, so let's see if you go for the 4-point road, which is clearly best. Yes, you do. Yeah, now your opponent makes a very interesting move. Instead of taking 2 points, they go this without a meeple. Why wouldn't they do a meeple? I would prefer a meeple there, because eventually it's not that hard to build the city. And you see, the reason why I like the meeple is because, like, you could get a city cap and place it over here, and then have this powerful formation of 2 cities nearby where you get to complete one and the other one is sort of here simply to prevent your opponent from connecting. I like this move overall with a meeple on this. Well, I can see why they didn't place a meeple. Anyway, we're not here to judge red. We're here to talk about your game. But you can see the pattern of this road going here. It's already starting to build up, and they're 2 tiles away from really completing this pattern. Now I think here we make a move which I am not a fan of. It's a subtle move. I understand why you did what you did, but remember how in the last game there was a similar situation, and I told that our protagonist should add this city tile to their own city instead of trying to disrupt their opponent's city. Here, the situation is the exact opposite. I actually rather like this tile over here because there's a lot of potential for future disruption, and you're taking away city caps from your opponent. You'll be able to you'll be able to connect to the city later in all likelihood, and if you're smart about it, then you can do it in such a way that forces your opponent to put shared tiles. No, that forces your opponent to put tiles into shared features if they want to see the monastery meeples back. Also, if you put this tile over here, there's some positive scenarios how you get to put something over here, maybe a triangle, to do the Ukrainian technique, and then you like start blocking this square and so on and so on. The reason why maybe I'm not a fan of this move, as understandable as it is because it takes away a lovely threat that you had and makes it into a non-threat. So with this move, you're not finishing this city anytime soon. You're saying it's a big ruin, which is fine because it's already 8 points, and when you connect, it's going to be 10. But it has so many connection platforms that all red had to do is just wait for you to build it up and then connect to it for the last moment and to freeload of your hard work. So I think a better move was to place it over here and then just simply still wait for some city tiles to create completion threats. Also, another thing that this move does, it makes this square a bit more restricted. And so now you have fewer tiles that you can draw to place over here to cut off this road connection. I mean, you could still draw this. This is, of course, the main tile that you want. But this dagger, for example, this is no longer enough. So yeah, again, like, not a big mistake, but here, especially because it's to your opponent's, next to your opponent's monastery, will be a good thing to annoy your opponent. Your opponent's now... Interesting move. Again, like trying to build these two roads, which is a good idea. Here you probably just need to take a meeple back. Glovier is saying, if they get a regular monastery, they just win, is a thought that pops up in my head every single game. Yeah, it can sometimes happen, but it's a good thought to have, not like from a psychological point, is, oh, it's so bad they're gonna win, but like empty monastery spots are a threat. Like your opponent could draw a monastery. So if you can do something about it, it's typically a good idea to do something about it. Like disrupting monastery spots means a lot. So now, interestingly, instead of completing the city, they chose to connect to the road and equalize the city, which is understandable. But then it's also good for you in the sense that you now have a clear threat. You now can have this and this. And now we are in a situation where I think you make what I would call another mistake. In this situation, I would go between two moves. Not between two moves, between multiple moves. I could consider starting a city over here to put pressure on this road. Even though this square is not completely blockable, but if you get something like a triple city, it can create quite a lot of pain for them because they will need to wait for this tile for a while. And of course, if you restrict the square to a starting tile, they will not be able to use a starting tile as a city tile, and then you get some gains for this. Another move that one could consider is to go over here. And the idea is that you're threatening to block this square. Maybe it's not the strongest move because your opponent can get a defense pretty easily. In fact, they can defend with anything which is not a city plus road tile. Well, almost. Or anything which is not a tube. So maybe in order to make these moves, I would first need to draw like a triangle or a triple city and then try to build around the square like this. This would probably be the most threatening. So what else remains? This move actually is more annoying than it might seem. And I'd probably be torn between this move and this move. Even though you're adding a point to your monastery, now your opponent does not have an effective use for city caps. They can only have a use for Doritos. And even if they get a Dorito, they're forced to use it for a shared city. Now, in the future, you could also go over here, maybe block the square and like put some more pressure on or whatever. Or, you know, you could go here as well. You made a move which I think makes sense, but I don't know. I don't quite like it because your opponent, as you see, 21 tiles, right? So many tiles fit into the square that really your main accomplishment here is giving your opponent a point. Like, you could end up blocking the square in the future, but if you really want to delay your opponent, then you turn this tile the other way and simply try to equalize. Because, yeah, this actually would simply give you more tiles. No, this would simply give your opponent less tiles that are good for them. That's pretty much it. And also this would mean that your opponent would have uses for only Doritos. Like, you go over here, and your opponent needs a Dorito, because the triple city tiles already need over here. So, yeah, if you're going to play against monasteries, maybe try to not add points to your opponent if you can. But it's all right. Now that's the one. There we had our chance. So the moves that are possible are this. Just trying to attack the city a second time might be worth it. Or this, trying to block it. Or my favorite one, this. With a meeple, of course. You are 7 points ahead on the scoreboard. Your opponent has some features here and there, but by placing a tile here, you ensure meeple majority, and then you can kind of like build around your opponent's monasteries, and then you either force them to add a tile to you in a way that helps you finish the city, or you block the square and build a big ruin. Now, building a big ruin is not that optimal, given that many of the big tiles are out, but are they? They're still Doritos, they're still triple city tiles, so you can get like 5, 6, 7 points in without really spending any valuable tiles, and you get to, you know, kill 2 of your opponent's meeples. Because, like, the threat of your opponents getting monasteries is a big deal, so I would probably go for the Ukrainian technique in this situation. The move that you played is a natural move, but there are issues with this. I'm not even going to show what your opponent's next tile is going to be. It's obviously going to be a tile that's very good for them. But anything that goes over here disrupts your city and continues their monasteries. So it almost doesn't matter what they draw. They will be able to get a benefit out of that by placing something over here. So you don't want to help them do that. They end up drawing the perfect tile just to connect and create spots for 2 more monasteries, or if they need to bail out 2 curves. And now it is difficult to do something about that. So what should you do now? Honestly, I really don't know. So this is maybe not a horrible idea, trying to block your opponent's meeple like this. Of course, it comes at the expense of adding 1 point to your opponent. This is not a move that I normally make. This is probably a better approach, actually trying to block your opponent's meeple and then see what happens. And if they connect, then you can use your meeple majority to crush them and connect into the city. Yeah, this is probably the move that I would have played. Yeah, Glovier is saying, my usual response as of late is just to make an enormous ruin near the monasteries. This is part of a plan, like this is part of the point of the Ukrainian technique, but of course, an enormous ruin near the monasteries is only is only one of the several positive scenarios that can happen. So the other more frequent scenario, not more frequent, but like equally as frequent scenario, is when you help. Is when your opponent finishes the monasteries but helps you complete a medium-sized city in the process. So here you go for what is the best move, but they of course immediately draw the thing, which is why I would now just go ahead and start reconnecting. Yeah, this is all good. They immediately reconnect back, which is very interesting. I'm not sure how much I like it for them, because they can lose meeples so easily. But well, it is what it is. I guess as you, I would probably go over here to try and do something about these monasteries, maybe get a road end, start some sort of block. You could also go over here, but I'm not sure if that's necessary, because like once they connect, there will be another connection platform. Or, you know, once you connect, you will create another connection platform for yourself. But let's see what you do. I kind of forgot. Yeah? Yeah? I'm not sure if I like that. I mean, I see that the disruption is pretty interesting, but you're adding a point to your opponent. I mean, it's a whole point. And you're not really making it harder for them to get a meeple back, because they still have this road end over here, and maybe they can afford this road to have this road blocked, sort of, kind of. Yeah, I would have instead gone over here, and another reason for this is because of the city cap, because you can actually create a vulnerability for this square with tempo by taking 4 points from the city cap. And imagine if your opponent had a curve, like the same tile that they had. They would be forced into a tricky decision. Well, I guess with this one they would need to go over here, of course, to complete the connection. But like with a regular curve, they would be forced into a tricky decision if this is not here. They would need to either place the curve over here and then forego the option of completing these 2 squares with monasteries, or they would place this curve over here, hoping for a straight line, trying to get multiple meeples back. But this is where you come in, where you can take 4 points with tempo and put a lot of pressure on this square. Also, by going over here with a curve, they would be taking away other road ends from themselves, such as this one, the triple city with a road, and the city cap with the triple crossroads. So sometimes when your opponent has like 2 meeples in the proximity, the best that you can do is just like wait for your opponent to untangle and then hope that your opponent makes some concession in the process. But still, your moves are right. They now continue the road. So we now see the same pattern, except that they have 2 more points, and you can't score points here anymore, so that's a problem. We don't get the 4 points, but we can go somewhere else. Yeah, that's completely legit. Now they get their meeple back. It's of course a fantastic tile for them. Nothing really we could have prevented, but it is what it is. So what you could do, I think, is to go over here. I actually quite like this, so that you can later go here and then block this square. You can also go here, although it is a bit of less of a block than what could have happened, because a road piece is a bit nicer here to have, because then with a curve you would be able to proceed with the block. But it's a tricky situation what to do with a straight line. You decide to go here, which is a legit move. Yeah, your opponent gets a meeple back, so that's not great for you. You're probably going to take 3 points, which is a good move for you. And also you are creating an alternative monastery spot, which is a good thing, because your opponent already has monastery spots here, whereas you are going to have, you know, a compensation monastery spot if you get one of those. Yeah, they do meeple this, and now the situation is really difficult. The monasteries are nearly unblockable, and I don't know if I have advice. It's hard. Okay, your opponent has 1 meeple. Clean off the city cap. So much for my advice. That's all I have. Yeah, good. This is what you did. They now get 4 points, 2 for the road, 2 for the monasteries. Nothing much you can do, just continue building. That's all good. Oof, and that's rough. And now they get another monastery, and I feel ya. Well, now there's really not all that much that you can do, but we will go through the game further. But I think the main thing that you could have done was preventing the appearance of these monastery spots in the first place by this move over here. Yeah, so like the Ukrainian technique is not sometimes just a fun little thing that you couldn't pull off. Sometimes it's like literally the best move that's so important that it's just plain necessary to prevent your opponent from running away with the game, and now your opponent is running away with the game. You quite wisely meeple a new monastery. I like that. It also indirectly protects your city, because your opponent can't really now go over here without giving you points. But your opponent is so far ahead, they really don't need to engage. I don't understand the purpose of this move at all. That is weird. You end up doing this, but actually I think it's all right. But given that you're behind, a move that's worth considering is the same move a square lower. Actually, to delay the completion of the city, hoping for one of the two Doritos or one Splinter, and also gets a city cap next to a monastery so that you can get another city cap and a road plus dropping a farm. Like, try to be like really efficient about this. Of course, this move could easily backfire, that you could get your monastery meeple blocked, but not the easiest monastery to finish anyway. I think what you did is completely fine and justifiable. But again, I wouldn't have blamed you for doing something different and trying to be more efficient. Your opponent takes quick points. Probably here, the best move for you is something like this. Yeah, I actually quite like this, because it still preserves a chance for a curve, plus maybe another curve to get a road upon completion. You also could go here, but it's quite icky, because this formation is a bit hard to fill. You would need exactly 2 curves, except that these tiles will no longer be suitable for you. Oh, this move is also completely legit. Yeah, maybe you should do this one first, and then bother with the monasteries. I like what you did. It's a good idea. And I think a majority in this ruin is really your main chance in this game, plus a bunch of quick points. So here you get a meeple back, of course, which is an excellent idea. Your opponent goes over here, which is a good move from them, but now it's a very interesting situation. The main question is, should we go here? Should we try to like really optimize our building? Because if we manage to successfully finish this city, then we drop a farm, or it's 9 points more, then it's just completely beautiful. However, I'm not sure if we're like at that point of desperation yet, because we can still draw a monastery, we can still draw some farmers. Probably the move that I prefer is just simply claiming the points over here. And if we want to build here, the way we do that, we draw the city cap first, and then we meeple this. And then we finish this and meeple the farm. So something like that. Because obviously I know what happened in the game, but we know that it's something that could happen in the game. Your opponent immediately takes 2 points and also blocks you. And maybe we weren't desperate that yet to kind of super optimize for the city just to get a couple of extra points. And also because this thing has become vulnerable, like getting the extender, adding points, creating a better monastery spot next to you, like these are all good things that you would be doing with this city tile anyway. So you would be getting like 4 extra points without the investment of a meeple. And even if you are to get this meeple back, like the fact that you don't have the temporary meeple majority anymore could cost you a couple of points. So yeah, you make this play, which makes sense, but then I think you may be better off Yeah, I see why you did that. You did to use one of the road tiles, but actually the road tiles you need to get your monastery meeple back. So I think it's better to turn it with the city side facing down. Yeah, there are a variety of reasons for this. Obviously, I can see the remaining tile runouts. It's hard to figure out on the spot. But generally, just thinking of pure efficiency, it's better to block in such situations with the city side for a couple of reasons. First of all, you actually are more likely to block with the city side because your opponent has a harder time defending. And the second reason is you're going to get an extra point when completing the block, because you're going to turn the tile like this, then you're going to get a Dorito, and then you get an extra point. So that's always something nice to have, especially in a game where you're trailing behind. But look, you're trailing behind, but this ruin is going to be like almost these 16 points that you're down. Like, this game is still winnable. So I think that's a bit of an imprecision here. But there's another concern. Another concern and consideration. So if you point this city facing down, your opponents can of course draw a straight line or a curve and go here. And make a complete block for you so much harder. But in this particular situation, it favors you, because your opponent has 2 tiles. And all you need to do is to draw one of these tiles, because you can use it for a block. Imagine this configuration. So your opponent went over here. No, you went over here. You're facing with the city tile down, with the city side down. Then you are straight, and your opponent points a straight road facing here. Then if you get this tile first, then you put it like this, so that your opponent needs the same tile over here, which does not exist. But the same goes if you get the other tile first. If you get this tile first, then you place this tile over here, and so your opponent needs the same tile over here, which does not exist. So given the particular tiles remaining, it's like better to turn this the other way. Well, yeah, your opponent completes the block. You can only do so much. You continue the monastery, but actually, I think it's more efficient to go here. Again, because in order to complete this monastery, you need 2 curves. But if you place the straight line like this, you need 2 curves, or this tile is also good for you. So that would be my consideration here. And as for the monastery spot, now you can't really use the monastery spot here because you kind of need the city tile. Well, I guess you can, but I think you still have a monastery spot over here where you should be using. And actually, there are still tiles to complete this monastery as well. It can happen very quickly. Bam, your opponent doesn't get a blocking tile, then you immediately place this, and you get to spend some useless tiles on getting 9 quick points. Yeah, so your opponent is trying to prevent a block, which, okay, that works. Then you're going to continue your city, which all makes sense. Your opponent is getting a meeple back. You're getting your precious 4 points. Yeah, your opponent unfortunately draws the connection tile, so there's only so much that you could have done. 1, 2, 3, 6. So how many points do they gain with that? Well, that was a 10-point move for them. That actually hurts quite a bit. Ended up being not decisive, but still. Well, by the way, had you turned this tile upside down, then you would have drawn the blocking tile, and then you would have actually managed to complete the block. But again, hindsight. We don't need to be results oriented. Yeah, just as you had the other tile. Well, obviously you decide to take a couple points. Yeah, your opponent takes this tile. Now, I commend you for what you did, but the truth is, just by looking at it, Yeah, this game does not seem to be winnable at all, because obviously it's a good idea to meeple a monastery next to another monastery and hope for this tile, but almost every single tile from your opponent is a blocking tile. So I guess the only non-blocking tile... Well, actually, no, they have 4 non-blocking tiles. That's actually not bad. Which means that it is important that you place this monastery over here and not over here. And the reason is that to simply minimize the number of blocking tiles. If your opponent gets a Dorito or a tile like this, then they can't do much with that. So let's say if they get a Dorito, then if you get this tile, you can still get away by going over here and meepling the field if you're not careful enough. And then you can like continue doing other things, such as getting this meeple back, and then you hope that your opponent draws a bunch of roads, and then you draw all the value tiles. So maybe that's a way to maximize this. I'm not sure if that would have been enough at this point, but... So placing this monastery... placing this monastery not here, but here, where I put it, that would have been more precise. Your opponent, of course, completes the block, and then he would have completed the block either way, but still, just to give yourself better percentages, this is what needed to be done. And just by using his meeple advantage, yeah, your opponent gets to do this, and it's really, really rough. I don't have any recommendations, just wait until the game finishes, honestly. Yeah, that's a good idea, that you actually drop a city cap. Well, I guess now you need to claim one of these fields, because what else are you gonna do? Yeah, precisely like this. It's good that you're trying to be precise until the end of the game. It definitely says that like you have a really good mindset about this. That's a difficult move to stomach, because your opponent's taking a 6-point field and they're preparing to grab a straight line, and with the straight line they're gonna gain 4 points for the road, 3 points for this field, and 6 points for this field. So that's like 13 points in one move. Luckily you draw the straight line to take 1 monastery point, and then your opponent simply takes a 3-point city. You drop the tile, so there's not that much that you can do. Yeah, this is a bit of a rough game. It shows you the power of the monasteries, but the main thing that we established is that your overall strategy is actually like really, really solid. It seems to me that you try to create the right threat in the right place. There were 2 things that we talked about in this game. Middle game tactics, just simply one move things which could have been done differently. So it's not like you had any strategical errors or anything. And another thing is being more aggressive against not just existing monasteries, but potential monasteries. So these 2 things, preventable. Simply with this move over here and employing the Ukrainian technique. I'm not sure if that would have been enough for the game, but it might have. It might have. That plus a couple, you know, of precise things, or maybe a little bit more luck over here with this ruin. So yeah, quite an interesting game. It shows you that even against monasteries, there's always something that you can do, just trying to prevent the disaster scenario. So hopefully y'all were able to make some takeaways from that. And our third game was sent to us by another streamer, CraftyRaf. But the main reason for this game is not the whole thing. I'm not sure if that was a part of some tournament of something. I think it was. It might have been a turn-based game. I forgot the context about this. So we're playing here a low-rated player. Obviously, in comparison to our protagonist, who of course is like, as you see, in the mid-600s, which of course is very strong. But the main thing why I wanted to show you this game was endgame and pre-endgame analysis. So I'm not even going to show the entire thing, because there are some imprecisions on both sides. Actually, let me just click through the game anyway. I mean, it has only been like so much time, but we'll reach the end game, and the position will be quite worth a discussion. Yes, Clavier, a RAV game, exactly. Ah, never mind. Okay, let's do the whole game. I tend to be spontaneous, but you see we have a lot of natural moves, and I won't go in that much depth, and I will also be a bit more advanced in the concepts that I use for analysis, because it's more of an advanced game. Yeah, so you finish a roads, it's all good. Well, anyway, I'm going to click through that. We are in a difficult position now, sort of, kind of. Well, it's not really difficult, but we are 3 points ahead. But red, our opponent, has a beautiful field, which is why, of course, as black, we try to counter it. Actually, let me do this as well. Yeah, our opponent's trying to snatch a road. We're trying to prevent that from happening. Our opponent pre-finishes the roads, and that's an interesting move that I would not have played. I guess, well, it's against certain opponent it works, yeah, because obviously now it's almost like reading red's mind, because red was now able to take the road, but we got some instant compensation for that. So that actually was quite strong, although I would have probably done something different. Yeah, this move I profoundly disagree with. Yes, it's a good idea to claim this road, obviously with one much better to claim it here rather than here, because then if you claim it here, then the road is completely secured, because you need one of the 5 straight lines to go over here and one of the curve to go over here, and there's no threat of your opponent drawing something like the triple city cap and you being trapped with this one meeple. But that's just beside the point. We're just trying to reach the end game. Oh, that's a lovely forced quadruple city tile that you inflicted on yourself. The road thing ended up not mattering because you got the straight line first anyway, but there are many scenarios how this could have gone south for black. Yeah, that's a nice prioritization, that we first connect to the field before we finish our road, because there's still 16 tiles with which we can do so, which is like a third of the tiles in the deck, so more than a third. Our opponent is being very aggressive. There's not much we can do about it, really, so we decided to start a monastery. It's an interesting thing about the monastery placement. There are several placements to consider. I like this one, despite its vulnerability, but I also like this one over here, 1 square lower, with the road pointing down. Given that there's still a sufficient number of curves, we can get a curve, another curve, and another monastery. But I understand this placement as well. It is just going, because you see, like, if you go for a formation like this, you're really not planning to build 1 monastery. You're planning to build 2 monasteries. Like, you're not filling that square with a random curve unless you absolutely have to towards the end of the game. So I've noticed in this pattern, it's sometimes more productive to take a 4-point monastery instead of a 5-point monastery, like over here, and leave a 6-point monastery gap, because, you know, 5 plus 5 is 10 and 6 plus 6 is 10. So you're going to get the same number of total number of points, except that it's a bit of an extravagant order, but you do this for the sake of efficiency. I think it will end up mattering a little bit, well, a tiny bit. Yeah, so you decide to continue the city, and then, yeah, now you sort of have a different approach of trying to build up your monasteries, which I rather like. You're trying to be efficient. Your opponent does not want to claim the city, which honestly, maybe it's time for us to do this. Maybe not yet. Maybe not yet. But let's see what you do. Yeah, you take the quick points, which makes sense, and it's nice to have this 9-point hole over here. Yeah, you see now your opponent claims the city, which is a bit unpleasant for us, but you get to continue your own, and it's a really nice plan. You could actually sneak it in Now you get to start another city with the intention of reconquering the field, which is rather nice. But of course we're not going to do it with this tile because we need to keep the city cap occupied, and then we'll drop this tile here later. Your opponent is trying to block your road, but if they block your road, well, first of all, it's not possible. It's only possible to restrict your road, unless, of course, they draw the one dagger like this, and then place it like this, and then the very tile that you're going to need for this square will be this tile that they have just placed. But again, the odds of that happening are really slim. Hi, Vika. Okay, Raf goes here. What else? What else? What else? Yeah, like just lots of natural moves. Now it's a very interesting thing of what you ended up doing here. There are multiple possible moves. Like for example, you can save your road and create an attacking spot, which I think is not the strongest. You can also continue your city, which could work. And my favorite move is to go here because it pre-finishes my monastery and then disrupts this city, actually really by a lot, because now you need because now red needs Doritos everywhere. If red draws a Dorito here, we can always attack the city from here. If red draws a city cap here, we can always attack it from here. So actually that would have been a really strong move, but you went for this move and I don't blame you. I think it's a neat idea. But it is a bit too committal, I think. Like, our position is still actually really good. Well, if we manage to successfully block the square, for example. There are many other ways. There are many ways how we can win this game without having to bank on this city. And what you're saying essentially is that you're going all in for the city. Now, it's not a problem to bet on the city, but like ideally you want to maybe place this tile here first, so that you can, you know, somehow put the square here last. And it's a bit of a difficult situation in the sense that I know that this square is vulnerable. Your opponent could get something like a curve, put it here, and then there would be 0 tiles that fit to get your meeple back, but maybe so be it. My game plan would be to be content with this ruin and then like try to win, you know, through this big field or through blocking like either this guy or this guy. But the reason why I really like this move is just, well, it's 1 point and it prevents your opponent from finishing your city. Like, it's actually really strong. But this move, again, it is completely legit, not because of the move itself, but because it is a part of consistent plan. And if you want to go with the game plan of finishing the big city, that's completely all right. So your opponent gets a meeple back, which is of course our immediate disadvantage from this situation. Your opponent gets another meeple back, which is painful. Well, this one of course was not preventable. Here you meeple the field, which I like because there's still a sufficient number of tiles that can get us over here. And the main point of meepling that farm was really to prevent your opponent from meepling that farm. Your opponent just keeps getting road Doritos, and they wisely meeple the field to equalize. And then you're now really close to finishing the city, but so are they. And they even meeple the farm, which honestly I quite like, because it's just so annoying to deal with, and they're now preparing to finish this square here. And now I think you're gonna go for the city. Yeah? I'm confused. I think it's better to place this tile 1 square lower, because, okay, I see the idea, like you have 4 city caps that fit this square, and if you place this 1 square lower, you have 3 tiles that give you a meeple back. But then maybe 3 tiles is enough, because it's not that easy to block. Like, you always will be able to get some sort of defense. And your opponent will be able to attack from here anyway. Like if they go here and they go here, you're going to have a 50-50 for finishing. Well, I'd be curious to hear your reasoning at some point, but anyway, I keep forgetting that also like that was nowhere near the reason I chose to watch this game. The reason I wanted to watch this game is like for literally the last 4 moves. Yeah, sorry about that. I just get carried away. I like talking about Carcassonne. I mean, hopefully some of you can get something out of that, but none of that was planned. Anyway, but yeah, definitely a legit move. I mean, you're getting 4 more tiles. I mean, what is there more to ask? You're getting 4 more tiles, and you see now your opponent finishes the city again, preventable. But of course, had you prevented your opponent from completing the city, you would not be in a position now to complete your city now. But at the same, but then at the same time, your opponent would not have this monastery meeple back. So it's an interesting trade-off. I think overall, point-wise, you're actually getting more for your plan than what I would have done. So, well done you, I guess. You go over here, and farmer, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Although there will be more places to farm, but no, I like it. I like it. Yeah, now your opponent places a really strong farmer at the same time restricting this square. So what do we do with this? I think we have to claim this 9-point field. That certainly seems strong. But another idea at some point, if we get desperate enough, we could meeple a field here and then wait for the dagger and then hope that we get the dagger and then we get these 4 points and we share a 9-point field. So let's see what you do. You go for the 9-point field. Obviously can't blame you. Your opponent tries to take over the big field, which is understandable for them. You get the 10 points. You get the monastery. So that's all just completely beautiful. Yeah, your opponent connects to the fields. I don't know if that's the most efficient way or not. Yeah, now it's a tricky situation for you. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure what to do. I just want to see what you did. So you are starting a new road, huh? Oh, I think I see the idea. Basically, you just want to get... You're banking on getting one of these meeples back, right? Yeah, that makes sense. But then if you're okay with this road tile, like if you want to draw this road tile, then you actually don't necessarily have to meeple this road. Because your opponent has... Yeah, I don't think this meeple actually does anything. You know why? Because there's already a 4-point road on the board. So not doing anything with this move and then meepling here gives you the same point value but without risk. But it's hard to recommend something else instead. Maybe going here and fighting for the field, but then your last meeple, that's a bit iffy and so. Oh, I can also see the reason why I did that, because you know that you're okay with placing a road meeple here, because if your opponent gets a monastery to connect to the field, then you get a meeple back. Ah, so that is actually a nice idea. Well, anyway. Ooh, okay, yeah. Oh, you're here. That's nice, Raf. Yeah, by the way, like full disclosure, it was a spontaneous decision, so I did not warn Raf that I would be showing this game, although obviously since you sent in the game, I assumed that you assumed that I would show this on my channel eventually. But anyway. Yeah, got it. So I think I read correctly your city decision. Oh, it's a turn-based game, and you started 100 turn-based games. This is about 100 more than I would be willing to play. I'm more of a real-time person, but of course I understand the appeal. Yep. Yes. So your opponent just simply restrict your fields, which is a legit thing to do, and you end up getting a meeple back, except that you don't get the sweet 4 points for the road, but that's okay. Your opponent ends up having 4 points for the road, and now comes the end game. So the last like 20 minutes or so, they were just extra, like they were not planned. I was planning to fast forward to this position and to try analyze it, because it's a very interesting one. Well, anyway, hope you that you got that you got something out of the other stuff as well. First of all, let's do a point count. We're 6 points ahead, but because of our opponent has 9 points. Actually, let me do like this: 9 points here. And we have, let's actually experiment more. What about if I start writing the points in black? Okay, perfect. So we have 6 here, and we have 6 here, and we have 8 here, and we have 9 here, and we have 3 here. I'm enjoying this, maybe more than I should. Okay, I'm in a very good mood right now. So 3 over 8, just because I discovered, like, I've been doing this for months. I've now discovered that I can do different colors for highlighting. This changes the dynamic on this channel forever. Well, anyway, your opponent has 3, and your opponent, because they claimed this field over here, they have 15. So where does this bring us? We just add all these numbers, and your opponent has, 30 points on the board, and you have 26. I think that's 26 points on the board. I know I'm missing something. 36. No, 32. Okay, the colors don't make it easier at all. I'm still slow at counting, and I don't like that. Anyway, 12, 32. So wait, this means that you're actually like ahead by a lot. You're ahead by 8, but that's the problem. Your opponents can easily get these 8 points back. So first of all, if they draw a monastery tile, they score 5 points for the monastery. Well, it's 6, but then it's -1. And they also get 6 extra points for the field. So that's an 11-point move that they can make. But then what happens? Then you get a meeple back. And with 1 meeple, I presume that you can, get these extra 3 points. Except that your opponent is the starting player, so they get to go last. And if they draw the monastery as their last tile, they actually win. Because then you don't get to use your new meeple to score some extra points. So that makes it actually pretty interesting. Oh yeah, there's this rodent tile, which I forgot, which actually makes your road move better. Yeah, maybe that was a good move. I just forgot about this tile, to be honest. Okay, so then how do we exactly prevent that negative case scenario? Because I think we win most of the time. We only lose if our opponent... No, but we also lose in a couple of other places. Well, so if our opponent gets the monastery sooner, presume we get, I don't know, something like this to score 4 points for the road. Or something like this to score like 3 points for the city. Then it would be a tie. No, but then we could still lose. Because if our opponent draws a curve... Okay, so just to be clear again, like your opponent goes over here, they go +3. Then, I don't know, you draw something like this, we are at 0. But then if they draw this, they are at +4. And on our last move, we're the last meeple. We actually can't score 4, we can only score 3. It's such an interesting situation that the position is so open, and yet there's so few point scoring opportunities. So I think the move that you played in the game. Okay. Of course I miscounted the points. Thanks for bringing this up. Okay, of course you can't see the black numbers, because the only way this thing works is like, it's difficult to explain, but it's like through a filter that takes away the black color. That's the only way you're able to see red. Okay, so it literally has to be any other color than black. I blame Craft Giraffe for choosing to play with black meeples. Had these been yellow meeples, I would have done yellow numbers. Well, anyway, the numbers are not helping anyway because I was wrong about the points. But why did I have it wrong? I thought that was being all right. Okay, again, we're at +6 here with numbers or not. I'm gonna do this again. I'm pretty sure that at least one of you wasn't following, right? Because the point counting thing, why I've been playing like 10,000 of games. Why does this still take time? Focus. 6 points over here for your opponent, so now we're equal. You're at +3 over here, you're at -15 over here, so you are at -12. You are at +6 for these fields, so you are at -6. You are +3 for the road, so you're at -3. You have this thing, so you're at +5. Yeah? That doesn't sound right. Because if you're at +5, this thing is... Oh yeah, no, if you're at +5, this thing is kind of harder to win, yeah. Because then, if your opponent gets this monastery thingy, then your opponent gets 5 points for the monastery plus 6 points over here. And so then we're at -6. Okay, I have to see. Am I correct? Somebody correct me. Yes. Okay. So this changes things. If our opponent can make him an 11-point move, making a monastery, it's like, yeah, and if we're -6, like, how are we winning? Basically, well, we're not winning. Like, there are no field connection opportunities. Of course, there's a field connection opportunity over here through a monastery and the curve, but then we can't rely on that opportunity given that the monastery is already here. That's certainly interesting. So we can't win if our opponent gets that monastery, I don't think, ever. Or wait a second. Maybe there's like a way. So if we are... Well, I can think of a scenario like this. Let's say if we go here and claim a 5-point monastery and our opponent draws the monastery on the next move, then we will be at -1. And then there are two possible ways to win from -1. We can either draw the road end, which allows us quick points. So for example, it allows us to get 3 points over here without an investment of a meeple, or we draw the curve and then we equalize because we take a 4-point road. But then your opponent gets +1. No, then we lose, yeah. So it does seem to me that in order to win, we need either the monastery or we need to draw like this guy really, really soon. So what do we do about that? And can we increase our winning chance without actually drawing one of the two tiles that we need? Elias is saying if you take the monastery, you can't use the meeple next turn. No, but the idea is, if we take the monastery, and if red draws the monastery here, then red gives us a meeple back to use. And red has to go here, otherwise red loses. Because 11 points is just too much. 11 points is worth more than the meeple. So this is like a common thing. You know what? If your opponent has a threat of gaining points in such a way that gives you a meeple back, it's sometimes efficient and generally good idea to put yourself without meeples to make sure that your opponent, you know, does the thing. That your opponent is forced to give you a meeple back, and then you end up like scoring with a meeple in every turn. So this already can increase our win percentage. So for example, if we do nothing, if we do random moves, given that we're at +5, if we hope to draw the other monastery, well, yeah, then we'll probably win. So we now found at least one way how we can win if our opponent draws the monastery. So we win if our opponent draws the monastery on the very next move, which already puts our win percentage from what? I think from 40 to 60 or something like this. Although we don't win always, so I think it's actually it's so complicated. Then but it still is better than the 40% that we would be getting now. But the idea here that you had was to go over here, and so that anticipating that your opponent would draw the monastery, and all you're saying is that you just want to get it over with. And I love that idea, because look at what happens. You're now at +5, and if you put your monastery here yourself, it technically loses your points, but not really, because you're getting 1 point for this monastery, you're getting a meeple back, and you're taking 6 points for this monastery. And then your opponent gains 6 points for the field, but your opponent, but you also gain 6 points for the monastery. So this is a net +1 for you. And what happens is you're meeple down, but you're 6 points up. And your opponents can't really compensate for that with just one meeple. The only way how they would be winning the game is that if they draw another monastery pretty much immediately, and then they draw a curve. Or, you know, since they're going to still have, I think, 3 moves, they're going to have a monastery plus a curve, and they have to draw them in this exact order in order to take 9 points for the field. So that's what makes this position interesting, and I do believe that the strongest move, at least when I was looking at it, I didn't find anything better. It still gives your opponent a chance to win, except that now they need to draw not just the monastery, but they need to draw the monastery early, and they need to draw the curve, which puts their win percentage at like, what was it? Actually, there's 3 scenarios. I'm too tired to calculate, but it will be like below 20% for sure, maybe even less. Yeah, significantly less. This is an excellent point. I actually didn't think about this, because if you're so we're gonna do this, and we're gonna meeple the monastery, but unless your opponent draws a monastery immediately, for which there is 1 in 5 chance only, we're going to grab one of those and block the fields connection, and then we win that way. Yeah, that's rather beautiful. Well, but if we get this, we don't get to block. So then our opponent still has like 1 move or so. Okay, let's first of all count for this scenario. So technically our opponent would need to draw. So that's a 1 in 5 chance for them getting the monastery, and then 1 in 2 chance for them getting the curve. So after this move, they will have a 10% winning chance instead of the 60% chance. Instead of the 60% chance that they have now if we do nothing. But also, I guess they have a slightly more than 10% winning chance if we get. But yeah, wait. But if we get this thing, then we get 3 points extra at no cost. And we're now at +9. And if our opponent goes here, let's say they take the curve and the monastery, they get the 9 points. With the other meeple, they can score like a maximum of 3. And then we'll lose by 1 point, I think. So here was the scenario that I was thinking about. So again, we go here, then they take, let's say this. Assuming that they solve the endgame perfectly, like they know what's about, and they simply meeple a new city somewhere here for 3 points. So they're now only down -3. You get this, and you can't block, so you just decide to take 3 clean points. So you're now at +6 again. They get a monastery. They drop a meeple here, which is worth 3 points. They're at +3 again. Then you have 1 meeple remaining, which I think you have to spend. Then you get this thing, and then you score 2 points, because I think there are no 3-point fields. That's the maximum that you can score, which puts you at +5. And then on their last move, they draw the curve, and then they place it over here, and then they win with 1 point, because it's a +6 move for them. They turn a 3-point field into a 6-point field. So unless I miss something, there's like one more winning combination in which they don't draw the monastery immediately. So it's exactly one more winning combination, which of course is 5 times, so 1 in 5 times 1 in 4 times 1 in 3 times 1 in 2 times 1 in 1 is that 120? I think it's 120. No, yeah, it is 120. So they have, after your move, an 11% chance of winning. So they get that 1 extra percent from the thing. Now, did we have to calculate that in order to determine what the correct move is? No. Is it fun to calculate these things? Yes, if you're me. If you're you, I don't know, but I'm all about these end games. Yes, exactly. 5 factorial is 120. I should have done this faster. Oh, I didn't think about this. Yeah. Because you see, like the calculation was fine. The Carcassonne thing was not fine, because they can get the curve, and then they get the monastery, and this works for them. So this means that this type of field connection also works, which means that so interesting that this doubles their win probability, which means that they still have a 22% chance of winning. Also, like a bit of an unusual probability, you know. Some, like, towards the games, these numbers are pretty neater, but it is 22, or technically like 20 plus. It's like 2 in 10 plus 1 over 60, something like this. Or wait, 12 and 60, 14 and 60. Yeah, 7 in 30 chance, something like this. Ah, yeah, that's probably what it is. So anyway, but the main point of that was, of course, not to calculate the strategic percentage. The actual percentages is just something that I like doing. The main point of that is to recognize the endgame pattern where if your opponent has a threat, sometimes the best move that gives you the winning chance is to actually help your opponent complete the threat in order to reduce said impact for the threat. So it's like damage control going on over here. So which is why you recognize that and you go over here. And now you're 6 points ahead, which is lovely for you. But of course, your opponent, I think, does not recognize the thing or something. Or do they do that? They do draw the curve. And now, if they go over here, they will have a 50-50 winning chance. And there's nothing you'll be able to do about it. And they do that. Ah, it's not exactly 50-50 because, of course, you will now start blocking. There's more complexity to this. Of course, there's more complexity to this. Oh, this is beautiful. So now they got 3 points. Now you're ahead +3. And so you go over here and you're ahead +4. And you decided to meeple this, but I think it does not really make a difference. Well, it makes a difference a little bit because technically the move that they should play now is to go over here and add U points. Yeah, this is actually rather nice. I mean, it won't really like help them win or anything. Well, it's either they draw the monastery or they're not. But the idea is like they know that you have either the monastery in hand or this thing in hand. And with this thing, you will block. And yeah, that's what actually makes it really beautiful. And so if they go over here, they add 2 points to you. In which case you're now no longer at +4, but you are at +6. Then you're going to get this thing. And you're going to put it over here. You're going to be at +8. But yeah, if they put the monastery over here, they will still win because they will be able to meeple the monastery and they will gain 6 points for the field and 6 points for this, and they will win +4. Still, it's a really good idea. It forces your opponent to find another move. It actually forces them to make the counterintuitive move of adding 2 points to your feature, which is why like placing this meeple over here is great psychological value. Because really, it does not change the win percentage, right? Because you're threatening the block either way. And if your opponent finds the move that goes over here, then, okay, if you get this thing, you can just meeple destroy in later and you're going to get the same 5 points. But what your move does, it makes it just more counterintuitive. So it's a bit of an anti-human move, trying to like exploit your opponent. Oh, that was actually your reasoning. That's great. That's great. Any like psychological stuff that you could do in Carcassonne that's absolutely helped. I think we had the psychological stuff discussed in one of your games before as well, like a month ago, for a similar situation. Yeah, and you see, yeah, they messed this up. They messed this up. Precisely, they didn't find the psychologically difficult move, the one where they needed add points to you in order to win. And so you end up blocking their city, and they end up scoring 6 points for the monastery. But this is not enough. I wasn't even playing this game. Why is it so satisfying? I guess I just really like psychological tricks and when they work, and also when you actually calculate the probability or the chance of your opponent making mistakes into, you know, the win percentages or whatever. It's just, I'm happy about this. Thank you for sharing this with us. And hopefully you didn't mind, and y'all didn't mind me being slow counting points or whatever, but I just wanted to walk you through all of these possible scenarios. And the main takeaway this is like, when your opponent has a threat, sometimes it's a good idea to help them. So as you see, our protagonist here wins by exactly 1 point. This is going to be the last game analysis stream of the year. We have had 14 of those so far. I think that's not too bad for like a year, or for slightly more than a year. I'll of course be accepting submissions for the January stream, so do feel free to send me your games. There will be at least one more stream, probably exactly one more stream this year. This will be Azul against subscribers. I will be playing those of you who are keen on Azul, and those of you who wants to play next week, next Saturday, similar time. Hopefully I'll manage to squeeze in a couple of uploads, although I've been saying it for a while, but stream-wise, this would be it for the calendar year. So thank you all for sticking around. Hey K Sunny is saying, Alexey, I'm interested in using the tile counting script in review. I have no idea how to install it through the website. It is, well, actually, let me just show you what you need to do and what y'all need to do. I'm not sure if you, basically you need to go to the page of this person from Carcassonne, Spain. And they have a link to this. So they are the ones who created the analysis script. And if you go there, yeah, this is the one. You get the link. There are instructions for installing. I think it only, like, it doesn't work in all browsers. That's the thing, and you need to make some manipulations. But it all says there in the GitHub file. I use Google Chrome, so that works in my browser. I'm not sure if it works in other browsers as well. And also, you can check out like some other interesting things that you can use for Board Game Arena. Like there is scoreboard filters for Arena, and there's a script that modifies meeple colors and meeple shapes and whatnot. So yeah. So this is the Spanish player who contributed his coding skills to the international Carcassonne community. Hopefully that helps. Then that's gonna be it for today. I'm in a good mood right now. Hopefully you are too. See you next week for some Azul. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you soon.